Cool. Awesome. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. So for those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Tracy Loring. I'm a coach in expanding possibilities, and we're going to get into that in a moment here with Ellen. And to kick off this series of podcasts where we're going to explore just different ideas, different premises, how we can live our lives more intentionally, and just really create more joy in our lives. When I sat with that, Ellen was one of the first people that jumped to me to have on board. And Ellen is a very dear friend. She's a mentor. She's my coach. She's also the founder and CEO of Expanding Possibilities, which is the organization that I got my coaching certification from. And Ellen, you've been doing this work since, 2015, I think now?
2014, actually.
2014. Yeah. So we're going to get into Ellen's story in a minute because there's so many really interesting, fascinating aspects of that. One of the things Ellen has done in the Expanding Possibilities business now is there's courses, there's webinars, there's programs, there's now an online community, and there's also a membership for folks to get access to resources and community that really supports them on their journey. So there's all sorts of things that you can check out, and I'll put the links to all of that in the description box below. So as we get into it, Ellen, I remember, so when we worked together at Rackspace, gosh, a lifetime ago, I remember getting a call from you, and I don't know if it was one of our meetings or something like that, and you were like, I'm going to do it. I'm leaving. I'm going to go sailing. And you quit your corporate job and you went out to live your lush life. So tell me about that experience. Like what was that like? What led up to that decision for you to just go, F it, I'm out of here?
It wasn't like one specific thing. I think it was a journey. It built over time. So I was in a position in my life where I was doing well in the corporate job. I was successful, things were going well. I had a house, I had a nice car. But something felt like it was missing, it wasn't, I was happy enough. I wouldn't say I was fulfilled. It wasn't really like filling my bucket. And I just split up with my boyfriend, and I had that, oh my God, I'm back to the drawing board kind of moment feeling. And a friend of mine, a coach of mine, was suggested I go along to this workshop with someone that she'd learned some the creative premises with. And I went along to this 2-day workshop, and a lot of things started to fall into place and started to make sense. Like I'd spent so many years doing all of this self-development and trying to answer the question, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? It's got to be more than just this. And everyone would say, yeah, but you know what it is, just follow your heart. I'm like, follow my heart. Like, I don't know what it is. If I knew what it was, I would be doing it. And it would just frustrate the crap out of me. And this guy, William Whitecloud, stood up and said, well, of course you don't know. You're completely disconnected from your intuition. Now, he didn't say that to me, like I'm praising, 2 days, but essentially that's what I got from it, was like, there's a reason that I don't know what it is that I want. And I think that's part of why my passion is helping people connect to what they want, because I've been through that journey, and I know how frustrating it is. And that's one of the things that gives me the greatest joy, is people connecting back into what gives them joy and finding that passion and purpose in their life. And so I went on this journey, which took me all over the place. I went and trained in Africa, Australia, in the UK, and just learned a lot about what it was that I really was passionate about, what I really wanted to do. And through the process of that, I realized that I was living what I call the shadow career. It's like just close enough that it ticks enough of the boxes you can kind of justify doing it. So I love to teach. I love to travel. I like to adventure. And I was running a training team for a corporate organization. And it was just close enough to what I love to do, but not really. And I had grown up in an environment where actually my mother and my grandmother were both teachers, and for them that wasn't what they'd wanted to do. So the message from them was like, well, don't be a teacher. And so I had grown up with that as a message. And so I started to connect what it was that I really wanted to do, and I realized it was I wanted to teach and I wanted to travel. And what was obvious to me was to teach and travel, doing the things I wanted to do, which was helping people connect back to their passion. And I remember sitting with a friend. It was the beginning of 2015. And I was just about to go back into the corporate job. And I was just like, I just knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. And she just looked at me and she said, yeah, but you haven't made the decision yet, have you? You haven't decided. And I was like, no, I haven't. I just looked at her, I said, in a year's time, I will not be there. I said, I would have worked out what it is I truly love, or I will be sailing, but I will not be at this job. And that just set up some wonderful tension for all of the insights to drop in and for me to go off and create. So I handed my notice into my boss in May, and I left that following December 31st. It's exactly that year.
Yeah. That's such a cool story, and I really resonate with what you're saying about so many people don't know what they want, right? And why do you think that is? Like, why is it that we don't know what we want? So often you say, even you're asking someone, how can I help you? Or what do you need? And often the answer is, oh, I don't know. Why do you think that is?
What I've come to realize is it's because knowing would create too much what I call tension for us. People don't like to be uncomfortable. And when you know what you want and you don't have it, that raises tension. It makes us uncomfortable because maybe we don't think we can have what we want, or we don't think we're allowed what we want, or we don't think it's possible. And so the easiest way to avoid all of that is to not know what we want, because then we don't have to face our demons. We don't have to face our fears. We don't have to face up to, how we might get what we want. We just don't think it's possible sometimes. So we just like, well, there's no point wanting it if I can't have it. So I'm not even going to say that I want it. And so we just get limited then by, what I call the cage that's over us that stops us from seeing what it is that we truly want, because we've been ingrained to believe that that's not possible. It's not possible for us to have what we want. We grow up being told as kids that we can only have what we want if we behave in a certain way and if we do a certain thing. And while that may make sense for a small child that you're trying to teach politeness and manners to, we take those lessons into adulthood, and we think we have to be or do something. We have to be a different way, and we don't think we can be a different way, so we think we can't have what we want. Or we spend our whole lives trying to be this different way, or change the circumstances that we think we need to change to have what we want, often without ever knowing what it is, that we really want.
Yeah. That's so interesting, right? Like, there's so much, one of the things that I've learned from working with you, but also just through my own journey, is how much those messages from our childhood get so deeply ingrained, and we just don't even see it for what it is, right? And really recognizing how those play out in our lives. So, what were some of the things some of your big aha moments as you were sort of coming to grips with what you really wanted to do next in your life? What were some of those aha moments for you that made you go, yeah, this is the right path for me?
It just kept dropping in bit by bit, and then the same thing kept dropping in over and over again. So, it started quite gently. It was really about me changing my relationship from doing to being. I was the kind of typical workaholic, high successful corporate, always wanting to work hard, always wanting to do extra. And for me, the first part of the journey was just dialing back on that and recognizing that I didn't need to do that in order to be successful. And so that was part of my biggest aha, was that I could actually do less and accomplish more. I spent a lot of time and energy doing the things I thought I should be doing, that weren't actually creating what I wanted to create. And once I learned that and switched that, the things I really loved came more to the forefront. And I started to listen. I think Steven Spielberg says it's the whispers of the heart. Like, you get quiet enough, you start to listen to the whispers of your heart. But part of my journey was getting quiet enough initially to be able to hear them, because they're always speaking to us. It's just we don't listen, or we discount them. And for me, it was learning to listen to those. And then gradually it just dropped in, and it was like, yeah, you want to transform people's lives. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, be inspirational. Okay, so just live my life. And then after that, it was like, now teach other people how to do that. And then it was build a business doing that, you know, and then it was like serve more people doing that, you know, build an online business doing that. And so it's evolved, because, you know, I believe our visions evolve, you know, as we can, you know, we can see it and we can create it, but as we expand and as we grow in our own capabilities to create, we see more things, you know, our visions get broader and more specific at the same time. And so it evolves and it changes, and it's kind of, our intuition leads us on a path that gets us to where it's true for us to be.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You know, I'd love to get your take on this as I start to work with folks, or even just, you know, explaining to people what I do or why I make the decisions that I make, right? And often it's like, yeah, why did you decide to go move out to the country, or why did you decide to quit your job and leave? And often my answer is, well, I got an intuitive insight, right? And sometimes that people are like, huh, what are you talking about? So, you know, when you think about your intuition or those insights, you know, how does that show up for you? You mentioned the whispers, right? Like Steven Spielberg talked about that. There's a beautiful talk he did, a commencement speech, where he talks about the dreams. Our dreams come to us in whispers, right? I love that. How does that show up for you? Like, what does it look like and feel like to get this aha insight moment that just changes your life?
I don't think there's one way, you know. For me, there's just a sense of knowing, and it's really the energy behind that knowing that is key for me. You know, if the energy is coming from a place of, for me, franticness or fear, or trying to work it out, or trying to figure it out, or trying to make something happen. But there are just moments where, you know, I've been sat on the sofa and I've just gone, oh, yeah, it's time for me to find a new place to live. And it's not come from trying to get away from something. I've not been trying to avoid anything. I've not been trying to change anything. It's like, oh, okay. And now it's time, you know? And so sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not what I want to hear, you know? It's not always comfortable, you know, the truth is not always comfortable, and it raises a lot of tension. And, but for me, it's been that sense of like, okay, yeah. It's got a calm and peaceful energy where it's obvious, I guess is what I can say. You know, it's just what's obvious when you're not in your head trying to work everything out, and you can look at everything without any bias. You know, we all have bias because of our beliefs, our assumptions, our definitions, or, you know, what we think about things. And it's what's obvious once you've got all of those things out of the way. So sometimes it comes when I'm deliberately putting myself into that space and I'm asking for an obvious insight, and sometimes it just drops in. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense from this space. That's obvious, you know. Doesn't always make sense actually, but it's obvious.
I had a very wise man named Harry Max, who I had the absolute pleasure and fortune to work with for a few years, say to me once, I was considering going after a different role in the company. And he was my manager at the time. And we had a practice in our business to always let your manager know before you explored other options in the company, right? So I remember having this conversation with him, and he said, yeah, you know, the question to ask yourself is, are you running towards something, or are you running away from it? And that's always really stuck with me, you know, as a great litmus test around, yeah, why do I feel compelled to do this thing? So as you're talking about the energy behind those voices in your head, right? That's one of the things that comes to mind is, yeah, is it something that's driving you towards something, or something that's wanting you to run away, right? Because that can have very, very different implications.
Yeah. Well, you take yourself with you, you know, so you're still the same person. So if you haven't dealt with your challenges and your issues, then they're just going to come up in the next job, in the next relationship, in, you know, whatever the next thing that you go on to do is. And and we take ourselves with us everywhere we go. And so if we're running from something, we're running from something that we are creating, and all we're going to do is create it in the next iteration.
I love that. We take ourselves with us everywhere we go. Yeah, that's interesting, right? A lot of times you're just, it's like we get in our heads and we look at ourselves as somehow separate from ourselves. And, you know, we sort of disassociate ourselves in some way, and look at ourselves that way. I'm doing this embodiment course right now, and the instructor, Mark Walsh, talks about, you know, often we treat our bodies as a brain taxi, you know, or a mind taxi, which is, you know, that's how we treat ourselves. And so there's this sense of separateness to the totality of who we are. So that really makes sense to me. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So coaching is, it's not a unique profession. That's not really the word I'm looking for. It's, there's almost a calling, you know. I think in professions that serve others, usually there's some sort of a calling that's embedded in that when you choose to be of service to others. You mentioned this a little bit earlier when you were talking about pursuing your truth and leaving corporate and that sort of a thing. But, you know, what is it about being a coach or being coached that has been transformative for you? Like what do you love about those experiences?
Well, being a coach, there's you end up coaching yourself as much as you end up coaching your clients, because you are constantly reminding yourself of the premises of the ways of operating that serve you as well as are going to serve them. So it's always been a structure that's helped me create what I wanted in my life, because I've been reminding them and teaching them all the way through. And you know, the biggest joy for me is when I see people connect and start to do things differently and bring more joy into their lives through them doing things differently, you know, creating the relationship they want, the family they want, the business they want, the job they want, and the joy that brings when people are really connected to their truth and they're connected to what lights them on fire. You know, the spark people have when they're just on their passion, they're on their purpose, they're just living the life they were meant to live. And that could be anything, you know, it could be absolutely anything. And it's the joy that brings up for people, and the recognition that they are, you know, they are allowed to have that. I have one client recently who's just created essentially his ideal job. He's been asked to put forward a plan, and he's put forward this plan. He's created his ideal job, and you know, includes all the things he loves to do, and he's taken out all the things he doesn't like to do. And there's a part of him that feels guilty because, well, I can't have all this, right? I can't have the exact job I want. I'm like, yes, you can. Like, why would you don't need to feel guilty, but we have that guilt that like we're not allowed to have it all. And I think that's BS. You know, I think we can have it all. It's just the all isn't what we think it is. You know, we are conditioned by society for what that all should be, and depending on the society we live in, that can be different things. But you know, the all we're supposed to want is, you know, the success and the society, whatever society's definition of that is. You know, the money, the house, the car, the family, the, you know, the I don't know, the 401k, the, you know, ISA, you know, all these different things. We're supposed to have all of this stuff, and that is supposed to make us happy. And we've really been conditioned that it's the circumstances that make us happy. And if the circumstances aren't right, then we can't be happy. So we spend our lives trying to change the circumstances rather than realize that it's nothing to do with the circumstances. You know, it's about what we want to create, what's important for us, and that can be different for everybody. So seeing people connect back and let go of the way they used to operate and step into the way they can operate, and let go of the guilt, you know, let go of the things they don't enjoy doing and be okay with that, and then create the things they do and see that is possible, and how much easier life is in that space. You know, that's what I love.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting, there's almost another part of that story about, we talked about people don't always know what they want, right? And the guilt that comes with getting it or having it, and comparing that to how you think it should be. Can you talk a little bit about something else that I see come up pretty regularly, and certainly have experienced in my own life, which is not asking for what you want. So maybe you know what you want, and you don't ask for it. Can you talk a little bit about, like, is that something you've seen, or I know you and I have worked through it together, so I know you've seen it with me at a minimum. But yeah, that's something that seems to be fairly common. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think deep down, we don't think we can have what we want, with, like I said, without being or doing, a certain thing, being a certain way or doing a certain thing. And because we don't think we can have what we want, we don't think it's okay just to ask for what we want. We think that makes us selfish or bad, or we're not going to get it. And so we go into, this unconscious manipulation where we feel we have to say the right thing, or we have to be the right thing, or we have to treat the other person the right way in order to have what we want. So all the energy goes into how do we manipulate this other person to get what we want, rather than just saying, well, this is what I want. Because that seems like, that blows people's minds. There's an exercise I do where we do this. We look at what comes up for people when they're just simply asking for what they want, and people can't get their minds around it, because it's the idea that you could just ask for what you wanted is, it brings up tension with people. People go, I can't just ask. Like, they might think I'm rude. Why would they give that to me? I haven't given them a reason to give me something. And it's like, I saw this great, I can't remember who this was. And it was about gifts. And it said, yeah, you don't deserve a gift. If you deserved it, it would be payment for services rendered. Like, you get a gift because you don't deserve it. That's the whole point. But that's the joy of it, right? You haven't done anything to deserve it. It's just the love of it. This person is loving you and giving you something, and it is that. But we think that's bad. We think we should have done something to deserve things, and so people have a really hard time just saying what they want, or asking for what they want, because they think people are going to respond negatively. In a relationship, if I ask what I want, this person's going to leave me. It's going to create conflict if I ask for what I want. And that's not for everybody, right? Because we all have different underlying belief systems. So for some people, it's hard to ask for what they want because they feel it's going to create conflict. Other people don't care if they create conflict, but they'll just tell somebody what they want. They're not, And so it's all different. We all have a different unconscious manipulation, and some of them are easier to see than others, because some of them are more societally acceptable than others as well.
Something you said sort of brought something up for me when you talked about love, right? A gift is really love. What do you think the relationship, or is there a relationship between self-love, loving yourself, and sort of having what you want in your life?
There is a myth, I guess. There is a movement out there that says you have to love yourself to have what you want in your life. And that's just another condition. That's just putting another condition in order to be able to create. And, there's a whole bunch of conditions out there. There's a whole self-development movement is basically founded on, there are certain conditions that have to exist for you to have what you want. So come along and learn how to love yourself. Come along and learn how to procrastinate less. Come along and learn how to get rid of your beliefs. And then you can have what you want. But all it's doing is putting in a whole bunch of other conditions before you can have what you want. And the truth is, we can always have what we want. We don't need to work through this list of conditions. So, is it maybe more pleasant to love yourself? Yeah. But does it dictate how you can create and what you can have in your life? No, it doesn't. One of my mentors, William Whitecloud, he said something the other day, and it just really hit home for me. And he said, creators don't seek emotional stability. Victims do. you know. And when we are a victim to our circumstances and a victim to our emotions, we want to feel good all of the time. We want to feel comfortable. We want to feel good. We want to love ourselves. And, you know, you don't need that to create, you know. Is it nicer? Yes. You know, does it help you stay in a higher vibration? Yes. Is it a prerequisite? No. When you understand how to create and how to use tension to create and how to use the energy and the emotion of what you want to truly create, you know, you may not love yourself and you can still create it. You know, I know several authors, they've published books, they still don't think they can write.
It's like most artists I know who think they're crap, even though they're creating really beautiful pieces of art. Yeah.
Exactly. We are not our best judge. Yeah. And nobody else is either, by the way. But to think that we have to be a certain way or think a certain way about ourselves or about anything else to create is a fallacy.
Interesting, right? And that's true. Like there is, like, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about all of those book titles in the bookshelf, you know, in the section of the bookstore when we used to go to bookstores, in the self-development section, you know, it's like how to say no, how to do this, how to do that, it is very much about how to be a certain way in order for you to have what you want. So that's an interesting different take on it.
Well, it's built on the premise that we need fixing, and that only once we are fixed can we have what we want. And what I love about this work and alchemy is that you don't need to be fixed. Like, you know, your spirit, your true essence, whatever you want to call it, spirit, genius, soul, it needs no self-development. It doesn't need fixing. It's perfectly fine just as it is, right? And tapping into that energy allows us to create. But there's a massive industry that's been built around the premise that you need to fix yourself before you can create. And people spend their lives trying to fix themselves, trying to find out what's wrong with them, fix them. And, you know, all that does is it puts you in that vibration and that energy, and then you stay in that vibration, that energy, and you create more and more things that you need to fix about yourself. You know, so we can believe that we need to fix ourselves. That doesn't stop us from creating. But if we act in that way, then we're going to end up spending our lives trying to fix ourselves.
Interesting. You know, you mentioned the word alchemy. Are we talking about spinning lead into gold? Tell me more about alchemy and what you mean in that context.
Yeah, well, I think it is spinning lead into gold, not physical lead into physical gold, but
I thought I could retire there for a minute. So.
It's taking the lead of that unconscious, the lead that it's because lead is fixed. It is there. It's this block. It's immovable, and that's kind of what we think about ourselves. You know, what we've been conditioned, you know, to think about ourselves, and that is the lead. And then when you, in alchemy and putrefaction, you break down the lead, you know, you make the fixed volatile, and you can kind of rise up into the state where you can connect to your soul, to your spirit, you know, and allow yourself to receive from that place. And then you have to come back and be fixed again and bring that into fix by actually applying it, you know, in the real world. I love the dolphin analogy because I think it's a great analogy. You know, dolphins live in water. They're, you know, uniquely adapted to live in water, but they still breathe air. They've still got to come up out of water, breathe air, and then go back in again. And it's like us as humans who, you know, we live in this body. You know, we live in our belief systems. We live in our assumptions and definitions of ourselves. And that's great. We can enjoy the experience of being human. You know, we're here to have a human experience. But there are times when we want to step out of that and connect into that higher, the albedo, as it's called in the alchemy, and just get that connection, get that insight, and then come back into this body and then take action on that insight and make it real and bring it into the real world, which is the rubedo in alchemy, which is applying the red tincture to actually turn it into gold.
Cool. It sounds like a very cyclical process as you described that. Kind of.
Because we're constantly spinning lead into gold, because we, in each moment we have things that are just coming up for us, or assumptions that we're making about things, about people, about situations. And when we can recognize we're in the fixedness of that assumption and take a moment to step out of that and receive the truth of it, and then come back down into it. And we can do that as many times as we need to, because you need the lead to create the gold.
Reminds me of the hero's journey in some ways, about the elixir that you learn through your own journey, that you then have a choice, some people might say an obligation, to share back to the rest of society and humanity as you go through and you learn that. I love that analogy. I love that analogy as well, for sure. Yeah. One of the things, you've talked about your journey. You've been a coach for several years. Clearly you've created other coaches. I'm one of your coaches. I'm still learning on my journey as well. And you've done a lot of study. You've done countless numbers of hours of courses and certifications and all of these things. If there was one thing that really opened the world for you in terms of creating the life that you would love, or how to do that, is there any one thing that sort of rises to the top that's like, yeah, when I learned that, it really turned me 180 degrees?
There's two things that's coming to me. I'll cheat a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of connected. One is letting go of how it's going to happen. And to recognize that actually it's about the vibration and of what I want to create, and letting go of how I think that needs to look and how that's going to happen. Which allows, I think, the magic to come through, which is the second thing, which is just allowing myself to receive, to slow down enough to receive the truth of it. And the example is, in that moment, as you ask me a question, I can be sitting here going, oh my God, what do I say? What do I say? What's the right answer? Or, what I've learned is just, I'm sitting here going, okay, well, whatever's obvious is just going to come to me. And so I've learned to trust that. Not that you need to trust it, but I've learned, to know that is going to serve me, even if I don't understand it. That whatever I get in that moment is going to serve me. And so it means I can, as you've been in several of my workshops where things have changed halfway through, we've just kind of gone on a different direction, because I had an end result of what I wanted to create with that workshop. And I had then the idea of what that structure was going to look like. But if something else changes to serve differently, then I'm going to take in a different direction. I'm going to allow the story that's going to resonate most with the people in that room is just going to come to me. So I've learned to rely on, I guess, or I've learned to listen to that voice and go with it. And in doing so, I've gone with it, even if I didn't, understand it, even if it didn't make sense. And I've seen the beauty, tenfold beauty that's come off the back of that. And that has come from trusting that voice, or listening to that voice, not necessarily trusting it, but acting on it, even when I didn't trust it, quite frankly. Make it kind of a way. I have more trust in it now than I did 5-6 years ago, but I've always followed it. And that's been the difference. But listening to that voice has been that letting go of the how, letting go of how I assume something is going to happen, so I can just open up to the wonder. I think you said it the other day, it doesn't surprise me anymore, but it amazes me every time.
Yeah.
something happens and everyone else is like, wow, how did you? And you're just like, oh. Yeah.
So it sounds like, there's an element of almost a faith. You could use that word. Someone could use that word, right? When you talk about letting go of the how and taking that leap, and the net appears. That's something I've heard you say before, right? there's almost an element of faith associated with that. Or one might say, how do you, is that a word that you think applies to this situation? First of all, that's the first part of this question. Is faith a part of this? And if so, how does that track with or compare to sort of the religious faith that people feel or employ in their lives? Obviously, knowing that religious faith can look many different ways with the many, many different kinds of religions that are out there. But, sort of what's your take on that faith and how that plays out with spirituality and other forms?
Well, I don't know if this is a dictionary definition, but faith for me is, it's believing in something when you have no evidence for it. And it can be used as a condition. Oh, I need to have faith that this is going to work, I've got to believe this is going to work. And so I guess there's an element of faith in giving it a go, even if you're not sure whether or not it's going to work. So I think it's more of a demonstration of faith as opposed to I have to have faith, because then it becomes a condition. Because, there's times when I've stepped out and done things based on a premise, I guess, because I have faith in that premise, but I didn't know that it was going to work. I didn't even believe that it was going to work. I thought it was absolutely crazy. But I had chosen to live by a certain set of premises, and then you're kind of in this learning orientation where you do it and you see it makes a difference, and that gives you a little bit more, well, you could say then it's not faith, right? Because you have some evidence.
Yeah.
And you're in that cycle then. Because what we need to think about is what messages are we giving to ourselves, because we create the messages that we give to ourselves. So if I love that, leap and the net appears, because if you accept that as a premise, if you're willing to go with that as a premise until something better comes along, and you go with that and you do that, the message that you're sending to yourself is, I can create what I want. If you wait for the circumstances to be perfect, you're never going to step out and create, because the message you're giving to yourself is, I can't create. And so when you look at it from the premise perspective of what message are you giving to yourself, and therefore what are you going to create based on that message, you have a choice. And I think maybe it's more about choice than it is about faith. You have a choice of where you want to put your energy and how you want to live your life. Like I talk to people a lot about kind of scarcity and abundance, and the amount of people who, I used to sell books door to door in the States when I was just after my student years or through my student years, and I would see a lot of fridge magnets in people's homes saying, the abundance of the universe is flowing towards me. Now, I never saw those in the homes of families who were truly wealthy in whatever way. Right? I saw that in the homes of families who weren't. Because if you are wealthy, the abundance of the universe is coming towards you, right? You don't need to tell yourself. If you don't, it's this affirmation, and all that does is tell you that you don't believe it. We're putting our focus on the wrong things, and we're going to create wherever we put our focus. So for me, when you understand that, you can look at, what are you putting your faith in? And is this giving the right message? Am I putting my focus in the right place? And I guess there is always an element of faith, of doing something for the first time. And what I found with teaching this is, for some people, it's just self-evident. They're just like, oh, it just drops in and it makes sense. And some people aren't wanting to hear that message. They're not wanting to hear the message that they create everything, and they create based on where they put their attention. And And so they're going to not have faith in any of those things, and they're going to put their faith in other things. We all put our faith in something.
Yeah. Yeah, that can sometimes be a tough message for folks to hear, right? That we create it all. And I remember when I studied Chinese medicine, and talk about premises, one of the underlying premises in Chinese medicine is that stagnations, energy flow that's stagnating in your body for many different reasons. There are different reasons why you might have stagnations, but that's really at the heart of what causes tumors. And that tumors are really stagnations in your body. And often stagnations can be caused by, energetic dysfunctions, but also emotional, going back to that, we're more than just a brain taxi, right? Emotions can sometimes get stored in our bodies and things like that. And we would have cancer patients that would come in, and acupuncture is an incredible way to work through a lot of the horrendous side effects of chemotherapy and all of these different things. And there was always, I remember having these conversations with my instructors about, how do you talk to a cancer patient about stagnations and the role that they might have played in creating that for themselves, and so it's a different way of looking at things. What would you say to someone, who might be, I'm a cancer survivor, or I've had this string of deaths in my family, or these different situations that the idea to someone that they might play a part in creating that in their lives would just be like, that just doesn't seem fathomable. What's sort of your experience with that?
Well, I think you meet people where they are, and if somebody doesn't want to hear that and is not ready to hear that, then sharing that with them doesn't serve them in one piece. It doesn't serve them at all. If somebody is wanting to change, wanting to shift things, wanting to know how, and you can share, well, we create everything, so let's choose what we want to create. There's humans are very interesting. Don Miguel Ruiz says this in the Four Agreements, we're the only animal that beats itself up about the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Guilty.
And it doesn't serve us. It doesn't help us to beat ourselves up about it. So what if you created your cancer? You can beat yourself up about that for the rest of your life and create more of it, or you can shift and create something different. Some people are just so that becomes their identity, that becomes who they are, and they're so wedded to that so they don't actually want to let it go. And I'm not here to try and convince people of something. When we teach premises, we teach it as a premise. It's not a belief system. You find me another premise that works better, I'll adopt it. And my friend Mark says, efficacy is the measure of truth. It's like, how's that working for you in your life? If the premises that you are applying, if the premises that you are guided by in your life are working for you, great. Why would you do anything differently? But if they're not, then maybe it's time to look at the premises and change the premises and see if the results change. And if they don't, find a new premise. And if they do, great. I've had friends who have, had cancer, been diagnosed with cancer, and created their way out of it, and change something. There's an aspect where we create everything. We do create everything. And sometimes there's outside events and we don't create it at all. And the thing with creation is it's utterly paradoxical. And you can spend your life like tying yourself up in knots trying to figure out all of the paradoxes of it. We create it and it means nothing. If something happens once, maybe it's a random event. If it happens twice, we're in a structure that's creating that. And the extent to which people are prepared to look at that and to choose something different, well, they'll be able to, change and shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I love that about really what serves you and where you are in the moment. You know, I have this conversation with my husband the other day, who's gone through a whole journey himself, right? Of looking for things that resonate with him, that serve him to create the life that he would love. And, we were talking about a few different aspects of things, and he gets very passionate about what he believes in and what he doesn't believe in, which is one of the reasons why I love him. And, you know, I said something very similar to him, which was, well, if it's not working for you, then don't use it. You know, like it's not about which path you take. It's about, are you getting the results you want in your life? You know, that's really what it's about. And I love that. I love that perspective. There's a freedom in that, right? That, you know, it gives you the freedom to adopt what works and change what doesn't. There's something else I've heard you say, create and adjust.
Yeah. We're not going to get there in one shot. And also it's not just about creating the end results. It's about how we going about that. Like, you know, we can put so much focus sometimes into creating the end thing and forget that to have a joyful experience on the way, you know. So are we moving towards what we want to create, and are we doing that joyfully? Are we doing that in a way that like lights our light up, you know, that lights our fire up? Because then we're, you know, for me, we're onto something, right? Then we're living joyfully, and we're living on purpose, and we're living with what we want to create. But if people don't feel that way, if that's not how they want to live their lives, then that's totally cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So speaking of creating and moving towards things that you love, you know, this year has been a banner year for lots of folks for lots of different reasons. I think we'll all look back on 2020 and be amazed that we lived through it all in one way or another. And also, I'm just hearing a general consensus from most folks I know and talk to that there's been an aspect of permission that the circumstances of this year have given them, a perceived sense of permission to actually go after the stuff that they really want, to spend that extra time with their family, or to write that book, or to build that garden, or, you know, sort of in some ways we talk about circumstances creating excuses to keep us from going after what we want. In some ways, this situation is almost taking those away, right? So it's been interesting, but, you know, I'd love to hear a little bit about, you know, what you're creating and expanding possibilities this year. You know, where is that headed for you, and what do you really love about this next stage that you're taking in building that business, and who you serve, and, you know, all of that lovely goodness.
Yeah. Happy to. One comment I'll make on that is, because I think you said something really key there, which is, you know, some people, you know, look at the circumstances and go, what an opportunity. And other people look at the circumstances and go, well, I can't create based on these circumstances. And that is, you know, that's the two, you know, schools of thought, if you like, right there. One is the circumstances prevent us from creating, and one is, well, let's go create regardless of our circumstances, you know. And it has, like you said, given people, depending on how they look at it, where they look at it with the premise that says, hey, everything's here to serve me in some way, so let's look at how this can serve me. They're going to have created so much more through this period of what they wanted. And by creating, I don't necessarily mean things, you know, it could just be time, you know, relationships, time with family. It doesn't, you know, society says that we have to have produced something tangible in order to be creating, but that's, you know, that's not my definition of success. You know, so, you know, for me going into this year, it was to have some time, to have some space, time with myself. I wanted to travel less. I wanted to expand the business and reach more people than I can do just my self-coaching. And even with the coaches coaching as well, wanted to expand it beyond that, and provide a structure that could support people in living joyfully, in living their truth, even if they weren't in a position to coach right now. And, you know, COVID definitely opened up, like I said, some opportunities to do that. and I'd say made it easier because the opportunity was already there.
Mm.
But you know, I certainly still find times where it's difficult to have conflict and say, no, I'm going to turn that project down because I want time to write my book and I want time to create this program. So it did, you know, give a lot of opportunity to have some more time to do that, which was wonderful. So yeah, we've created a membership, which is a structure that serves people monthly to hold them in their highest vibration. We've created a new virtual program called Unlock Your Cage, which we deliver online. And, you know, it goes back to this magic, you know, you think you're creating one thing, and when you follow the truth of it, you uncover more, you know. So one of the things by doing things online, I've realized is, you know, we can have people in different countries, in different time zones, in different locations. We don't have to get everyone together in one place. So it's been really amazing to have clients in, you know, New York and Austin and San Antonio and Minnesota and the UK, and you know, be able to connect with each other and share this, you know, from all over the world. And that was not something that I had consciously realized going into this that was going to be a benefit from that. But it was one of those nice moments where you're like, oh, yeah, my spirit's got this. It knows what it's doing. And you realize that it's going to have a bigger impact than you think it is. We're also launching a mastery program later this year, and a new coaching certification program beginning of next year as well. Cool. So there's lots of things that are going on, lots of things we're creating at the moment. So it's fun, and it's I've stopped saying busy because that is my I have to be busy. So letting go of busy, you know, I'm creating, and there's times when I'm creating, and there's times where, you know, I just take some time down and, you know, work a couple of hours maybe, or have a chat with somebody, and that's about all I've done all day, you know, and that's great too. So there's the ebb and flow in that creation.
Cool. Is there, you know, one thing in particular that you're most excited about working on throughout the rest of the year? I can't believe we're like halfway through the year already. My head's already thinking about holiday season, and, you know, like, good heavens. Is there any one thing that really has you on fire right now?
Well, I'm excited to get to my boat next weekend. That's probably not the question, but
no, like, just whatever in your life, right? Yeah, whatever it is.
I'm excited to get back to the boat and to have some time on the water. But from the business, I'm loving the building, the online, and building the membership. And we've just done a series of free orientation calls where people stepped into, you know, what was their vision and what they wanted to get out of it. And it just so aligns with my vision. And it was just a really good recognition that, yeah, this is going to serve, you know, these people, and we are going to grow this, and it's going to serve even more people, and we can make this absolutely brilliant. So, you know, there's nights where I suddenly look up and it's 10 o'clock at night and I've forgotten to eat because I'm just in the creation of what I'm doing, and, you know, I love that energy. So that's the thing that's lighting my fire the most at the moment, and just how that will the impact that will have, and the knock-on effect and the impact that that's going to have, yeah, for all of us. So yeah, that's probably the thing I'm most excited about.
Cool. Awesome. So I know we're just about out of time, so I'll just end with one other question, which is, you know, is there anything you want to leave folks with today who've been watching and hearing your journey and hear us chat? Is there anything in particular you'd like to leave with folks for today?
Yeah, that you know, nothing stops you from creating what you love. There's no circumstances that stop you from creating what you love, but you have to own what that is. You know, you have to have the courage to put it out there and go, this is what I want, knowing you might not create it, knowing you may not be able to do it, knowing that it may not be possible, and be vulnerable to that, and then putting it out there, and then, you know, focus on that and watch the magic unfold.
I love that. Watch the magic unfold. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ellen, for your time today and sharing your story and chatting with me.
It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're interested in learning more about Ellen or expanding possibilities, you can check out expandingpossibilities.today. And I'll leave that link in the description box below as well. So please let me know in the comments below if there are other topics you'd like to hear more. And I'm sure I'll have Ellen back again, and we can dig into some different topics as things come up. So thanks so much for being here. See you next time.
Bye.